Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Layaq Siddiqui, the father of Holophase. Part 18 Nonlinear Productions When Stories Interact with Themselves. Remember the language we are learning. There is one field, phi, the holophase, one continuous cyclic movement from which all of reality unfolds. When phi begins to change, its first derivatives appear, and with them, the three dimensions show themselves at once: time as omega, space as k, and motion as v, built from both. Every higher derivative is a finer question about how phi changes, and each one casts three shadows together: a time shadow, a space shadow, and a motion shadow. These echoes mix and weave into one another, forming the patterns we call fields, particles, bodies, thoughts, and worlds. In this picture, everything that exists is a living tapestry of phi, endlessly echoing through its derivatives and their dimensional shadows. Today, we listen to just one of those echoes. You are standing at a pivotal threshold within Book 9.4, Dynamical Grammar, of Episode 9. Our journey through this book has built an elegant and powerful framework. We discovered the director, the actions phi, the narrative cost function that selects which stories are told. We learned the director's method, the equation derivation rules that translate the global command minimize cost into local equations of motion. We then uncovered a profound secret. The symmetries of the action dictate immutable conservation laws, the permanent numbers the universe refuses to change. This framework, however, has had a certain pristine, almost sterile quality to it. The waves we studied in Book 9.3 passed through each other unchanged. The equations were linear. The principle of superposition held perfectly. It was a world of polite, non-interfering sentences. But look at the world around you. It is not polite. It is vibrant, messy, interactive, and creative. Waves don't just pass. They crash, they merge, they create new patterns. Light bends light in intense fields. Sound waves combine to create shocking booms. Ripples on water can form persistent, traveling humps. The universe is not just a recital of solos. It is a jam session where the players influence each other, creating music that no single player could produce alone. Today, in Part 18, Nonlinear Productions, we cross into this vibrant, complex realm. We learn how the holophase language writes stories that interact with themselves. We introduce nonlinearity, the grammatical feature that allows phi to talk to phi, to bend its own rules, and to generate the breathtaking complexity of reality from a single field. Our anchor image is a busy, crowded marketplace in an ancient city. Picture the flow of people. When the crowd is sparse, people walk freely. They are like linear waves. They pass through each other with minimal interaction. But as density increases, something shifts. A bottleneck forms. Someone stops to look at the stall, and a small crowd gathers behind them. This clump affects the flow around it, causing others to slow and divert. The crowd's density now influences its own motion. This is nonlinearity. The state of the system, the crowd's motion, depends on the system state, the crowd's density, in a non-proportional, self-referential way. A small increase in density can cause a disproportionate, sudden change in behavior. A standstill, a wave of shuffling, a collective pattern. Today, we learn how to write this self-influence into the grammar of phi. Here is the essential puzzle of this part. Our dynamical grammar so far has given us linear equations. These are powerful, but they describe a world where causes are proportional to effects. Double the force, double the acceleration. But we know of countless phenomena where effects are not proportional to causes. A gentle push on a pendulum gives a proportional swing. A very strong push might send it into chaotic motion or even over the top. A faint light passes through glass. An intense laser pulse can change the glass's properties and affect itself. How does the holophase language, built on the simple foundation of phi and its derivatives, accommodate and generate this rich, disproportionate, interactive behavior? The answer lies in the structure of the action cipher itself. Until now, we've implicitly considered actions where the Lagrangian density L is a quadratic function of phi and its derivatives, terms like phi squared, omega squared, k squared. These lead to linear Euler-Lagrange equations. Nonlinearity enters when we include in L terms that are higher powers or more complex functions of phi and its derivatives. Think of terms like phi cubed, phi to the fourth, phi times omega squared, or sine of phi. These are self-interaction terms. They mean the cost of a phi configuration at a point isn't just determined by simple squares, it's determined by more intricate relationships involving the field's own amplitude. So what happens when we include a term like phi cubed in the action and then derive the equation of motion? The resulting equation gains an extra term, something proportional to phi squared. This is the key. Now the equation says, the acceleration, or second derivative, of phi depends not just on phi itself linearly, but on phi times phi. This is a nonlinear equation. The principle of superposition breaks down catastrophically. If you have two solutions, phi 1 and phi 2, their sum is not a solution, because when you plug phi 1 plus phi 2 into the equation, the phi squared term generates cross terms like 2 times phi 1 times phi 2 that don't cancel out. The waves are no longer independent, they scatter off each other. They interact. From this simple grammatical addition, allowing the action to contain terms beyond simple squares, an entire universe of complex phenomena unfolds. Let's explore the triunity of nonlinearity, the time echo of nonlinearity, rhythm, chaos, and solitons. Nonlinear equations can have solutions that are localized in time and yet persist. These are temporal solitons, or pulsating modes. They can also lead to chaos, where the long-term behavior becomes exquisitely sensitive to initial conditions, making detailed prediction impossible, even though the equations are perfectly deterministic. The time echo of nonlinearity is complex temporal signature, be it the regular but anharmonic oscillation of a large amplitude pendulum, the unpredictable tumble of a chaotic double pendulum, or the stable, repeating pulse of a mode-locked laser. Time itself becomes textured with intricate, self-generated rhythms. The space echo of nonlinearity, patterns, fronts, and localization. Nonlinearity can counteract the natural tendency of waves to spread out, dispersion. When nonlinear self-focusing balances linear dispersion, you get spatial solitons, localized humps of light or water that travel without changing shape, like stable lumps of energy. Nonlinearity can also drive spontaneous pattern formation. Think of the hexagonal convection cells in boiling water, Bénard cells, the stripes on a zebrafish, or the swirling patterns in Jupiter's atmosphere. These are not imposed from outside. They emerge because the uniform state becomes unstable under nonlinear interactions, and the system settles into a new, spatially patterned state. The space echo is self-organized geometry, the motion echo of nonlinearity, shocks, scattering, and creation. Nonlinearity changes how disturbances propagate. In a linear system, a sound wave travels at a fixed speed. In a nonlinear system, like a high-amplitude sound wave, a sonic boom, the peaks travel faster than the troughs because the speed depends on the local density pressure, the amplitude itself. This causes the wave to steepen and eventually form a shock wave, a sudden discontinuous jump. Nonlinearity also governs the scattering of waves. Two light waves in a nonlinear crystal can interact to produce a third wave of a new frequency, frequency doubling. This is the basis of technologies like green laser pointers. The motion echo is dynamic interaction and transformation, waves that change each other and give birth to new waves as they move. Now let's locate this rich and essential node on the master tree. We are on the nonlinear interaction branch, a sprawling, fruit-laden limb of the dynamical grammar trunk. This branch depends fundamentally on the previous nodes. We need the action S, the derivation rules, and an understanding of linear wave solutions to see how nonlinearity modifies them. It enables the next grand synthesis, the generation of complexity, structure, and effectively all of observed macroscopic physics. It is the bridge from the simple, elegant foundation of phi to the messy, beautiful, structured world we inhabit. Without nonlinearity, there are no bound states, no phase transitions, no turbulence, no life. To make this tangible, let's scatter our lanterns across the scales of reality. A near lantern, from acoustics, the human voice, and musical instruments. Your vocal cords produce a sound wave that is not a pure sine wave, it's rich with harmonics. This richness comes from the nonlinear dynamics of the vocal fold tissue. The vibration amplitude affects the stiffness and airflow in a nonlinear way, generating higher frequencies. Similarly, a violin string at large amplitude exhibits a slightly sharper pitch because the tension increases with stretching, a nonlinear effect. The beautiful, complex timbre of music is a gift of nonlinearity, a middle lantern from fluid dynamics, ocean waves and tsunamis. Small water waves are nearly linear and disperse, but as wind pushes them to large amplitude, nonlinear effects become dominant. The crests become sharper, the troughs flatter. Under the right conditions, nonlinear focusing can create rogue waves, massive, spontaneous walls of water far taller than surrounding waves. A tsunami in deep water is a long wavelength wave with small amplitude, but as it approaches the shallow coast, nonlinearity and conservation of mass force the water to pile up into a devastating, towering shockwave of water. The transformation from a subtle swell to a destructive force is a classic nonlinear production. A far lantern from particle physics, the Higgs field and mass generation. In the standard model of particle physics, the Higgs field is described by a potential with a famous Mexican hat shape. This potential is highly nonlinear. In its symmetric state, at the top of the hat, particles are massless, but the nonlinear dynamics force the field to roll down and settle into a stable, non-zero value, the brim of the hat. This spontaneous symmetry breaking, driven by nonlinearity, gives masses to other particles like the W and Z bosons and fermions. The very existence of mass, and therefore of stable matter, stems from a specific nonlinear self-interaction in the Higgs sector of the action. This is perhaps the most profound example of nonlinearity writing a fundamental chapter of reality. From the richness of a voice, to the terror of a rogue wave, to the origin of mass, a unifying theme. When the rules of the game allow the state of the system to influence the rules themselves, when the story can bend its own grammar, the possibilities for complexity, structure, and novelty explode. Nonlinearity is the engine of genuine creativity within the Holophase language. What then is the specific language role of nonlinear productions? They are the grammatical rules for self-reference and dialogue. They are the production rules that allow a sentence in the phi story to refer to itself, to modify its own meaning, and to engage in conversation with other sentences. They move the language from monologue to dialogue, from description to drama. They answer, how can the narrative fold back upon itself to create new meanings and structures? The core question this part asks about phi is, what happens when the action S phi includes terms that are nonlinear in phi or its derivatives? And what new classes of solutions, solitons, patterns, chaos, and phenomena, scattering, shocks, symmetry breaking, emerge from the resulting nonlinear equations of motion? We are moving from studying the propagation of given patterns to studying the generation of new patterns through self-interaction. What do these nonlinear rules do in the generative process? They enable the formation of stable, localized structures, solitons, bound states, that can act like persistent things. They drive spontaneous symmetry breaking and phase transitions, leading to diverse states of matter. They introduce thresholds and bifurcations, where small parameter changes cause qualitative sudden shifts in behavior. They permit energy transfer between different wave modes, enabling scattering and the creation of new frequencies. They underpin all of classical nonlinear physics, fluid turbulence, plasma dynamics, nonlinear optics, and solid-state physics. Now, stability and breakdown. Nonlinear systems are notoriously rich and varied. Their behavior can be stable, solitons, limit cycles, metastable, patterns that persist until a large enough perturbation, or chaotic, exponentially sensitive to initial conditions. The analytical framework we've built, the action principle, and Euler-Lagrange equations, still holds perfectly. The breakdown is not of the grammar, but of the simple solution methods. We can rarely write down a general solution for a nonlinear equation. Instead, we rely on perturbation theory, treating nonlinearity as a small correction, numerical simulation, or the search for special analytic solutions, like solitons. The grammar is intact, but its stories have become deeply complex. This brings us to our disciplined core, falsifiability. The claim that observed nonlinear phenomena arise from specific nonlinear terms in a holophase action is a precise, if challenging, hypothesis. The central claim. For a given nonlinear physical system, there exists an action S phi with specific nonlinear self-interaction terms such that 1. The derived equations of motion predict the observed qualitative regimes. For example, existence of solitons, threshold for pattern formation, onset of chaos. 2. They quantitatively match specific measurements, soliton shape and speed, pattern wavelength, critical parameter values at bifurcation points, frequencies of newly generated waves and scattering experiments. A concrete measurement scene, optical solitons in a nonlinear fiber. We set up an experiment with a special optical fiber whose glass has a strong Kerr nonlinearity. Its refractive index increases slightly with light intensity. This gives an effective action with a phi to the fourth term, where phi is related to the electromagnetic field. We launch very short, intense laser pulses into this fiber. In a linear fiber, the pulse would spread due to dispersion. Here, we can tune the pulse's initial power and shape. We use sensitive detectors to measure the pulse shape after it has traveled a known distance down the fiber. The pass condition, validation. At low power, the pulse spreads as predicted by linear dispersion. As we increase the power past a specific threshold, we observe that the pulse does not spread. It maintains its shape over a long distance. This is a temporal optical soliton. The measured power required to achieve this balanced state matches the theoretical prediction from the nonlinear Schrödinger equation derived from the action with the Kerr term. Furthermore, if we launch two solitons with different phases or amplitudes, we can observe their nonlinear interaction. They may attract, repel, or merge, and these interactions are also predicted by the same nonlinear equation. The data confirms that the specific nonlinear term in the phi action correctly models the self-focusing that counteracts dispersion. The fail condition, falsification. No stable soliton is formed at any power level, or the power required is orders of magnitude off from the prediction. The pulse behavior at high power is qualitatively different. Perhaps it breaks up into chaos or forms a shock, in a way not captured by the standard Kerr nonlinearity model. If, to fit the data, we need to add wildly different or multiple ad hoc nonlinear terms with no independent justification, the idea that a simple phi cubed or phi to the fourth term captures the essence of the interaction is weakened. It would suggest the holophase grammar for that system is either more complex or fundamentally different. This falsifiability ensures that the fascinating world of nonlinearity remains subject to the rigorous dialogue between prediction and experiment. Let's cultivate a practical recognition skill. You can train your perception to recognize nonlinearity in any system where the output is not proportional to the input, where feedback loops exist, or where small changes can trigger large qualitative shifts. Watch the spread of a forest fire. The rate of spread is not simply proportional to the wind speed. It depends nonlinearly on factors like fuel density and moisture. A small increase in temperature or a drop in humidity can push the system past a threshold from a controllable burn to an uncontrollable inferno. The fire zone heat dries out nearby fuel, creating a positive feedback loop, a classic nonlinear self-interaction. Observe the dynamics of a playground swing. A small push at the right time leads to a large swing. The relationship between push timing, amplitude, and swing amplitude is nonlinear. Pushing at the wrong time can dampen the motion. The system's state, its phase, dictates the effect of the input. Consider economic market crashes. In traditional linear models, price changes are proportional to external shocks. In reality, markets exhibit nonlinear feedback. Falling prices trigger margin calls and panic selling, which drive prices down further in a self-reinforcing crash. The infamous flash crash is an extreme example of nonlinear dynamics in a complex system. Whenever you see a system where the whole is different from the sum of its parts, where interactions create emergent behavior, or where there are sudden regime changes, you are likely witnessing nonlinear dynamics. You are seeing stories interacting with themselves. We must connect this crucial expansion deeply to our holophase journey. In the previous part of dynamical grammar, we built a powerful but linear engine. With nonlinear productions, we have given that engine the capacity for creativity. The single field phi, through self-interaction, can now generate stable entities, solitons that resemble particles, spontaneous patterns that resemble organisms and landscapes, and chaotic dynamics that resemble the unpredictability of life. We haven't added new fields for particles or patterns. We've simply allowed the one field to have a richer conversation with itself. This is how complexity is born from unity. If you want to see the full mathematical derivations and exact equations behind this idea, the detailed forms of nonlinear Lagrangians, the derivation of the nonlinear Schrödinger equation, the Sine-Gordon equation, the methods for finding soliton solutions, you can search for Holophase on Zenodo. There you will find the scientific papers that this audio journey is built on. Let us pause and survey the completed landscape of Book 9.4. We began with the selector, action, learned its voice, equations, discovered its immutable principles, symmetry or conservation, and now we have given it the gift of conversation, nonlinearity. This completes the dynamical grammar. we now have a full production engine, capable of generating not just simple motions, but the entire drama of interacting entities, from colliding solitons to forming galaxies. In the next part, we will embark on a new kind of adventure. We will reinterpret everything we've built not just as a language or a dynamics, but as a program. We enter Book 9.5, Computational Generation. We will see the holophase field phi as the state of a universal computer, its derivative rules as instructions, and time evolution as execution. We will connect this to cellular automata, algorithmic information, and ask, can simple seeds in phi compute and generate the complex worlds we see? This is where the generative grammar meets the theory of computation, opening a breathtaking vista on the universe as an ongoing computation. Before we end, the mandatory zoom out to hold our scope. Nonlinearity, for all the complexity it generates, is still just a property of the action as phi. The terms phi cubed, phi to the fourth, sine of phi, these are still just functions of the one field and its derivatives. We have added no new substances. We have simply considered the wider vocabulary for the narrative cost function. One field, phi, plus its infinite tower of derivative questions, plus the principle of stationary action, plus the potential for nonlinear self-interaction. From this, the universe writes stories of interaction, creation, and enduring form. The simplicity of the foundation is not betrayed by the complexity of the outcome. It is the very source of that complexity. As we conclude, hold the image of the crowded marketplace. Each person is a local excitation in the phi field. Their linear motion is their free propagation. But as they crowd together, their presence alters the landscape for others. They form clumps, solitons. They create flowing patterns. They experience sudden stalls, shocks. The entire vibrant, chaotic living scene emerges from the simple rule of individuals trying to move, coupled with the nonlinear fact that their motion depends on the density created by everyone else. The universe is this marketplace on the scale of existence. The holophase field is the crowd. Linear grammar gives them legs. Nonlinear grammar gives them a society. And from that society, everything we call reality is born. Salam, and peace be upon you.